The Electric Rodeo is an adult toy megastore podcast about sex, toys, pleasure, and relationships.
It contains adult themes, adult language, and probably too much information about our sex lives.
Sorry, Mum. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to the Electric Rodeo. I'm your host, Emma Hewitt.
And I'm the ooky spooky ghost that lives in your room and watches you masturbate
Oh
at
my
night.
God.
Touch
The ooky spooky ghost. Great. Well, this is a sex podcast, and now that's all anyone is going to think about any time that they have sex or masturbate.
I think
being watched.
I think it is presumptuous to assume that there isn't the potential of a ghost in anyone's room watching them masturbate. I know for me, whenever I go to masturbate, I'm always like, am I okay with a ghost watching this? You know what? I am.
Putting on a show.
Wow, I'm an exhibitionist. I'm into voyeurism.
It's your little voyeurism ghost in the corner watching you.
This is just how I scratch my exhibition.
Ticks all the boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Oh, yeah.
Are you sure it's not just George in the corner?
Oh, yeah, that too.
So why is it ooky spooky, Tash? What are we talking about today?
Oh, great question, Emma. Well, today we have a sex witch joining us on the show, and we are talking about sex magic.
Woo, woo.
So I just thought I'd get on theme.
Yeah, with famously magical ghosts.
Well, it had to be something magical or ethereal and sexual. So naturally, I thought of a ghost watching you masturbate. I feel like anyone's brain would go there.
Oh, famously. I mean, the scene from Ghost, the film, is
one that
hot.
I have not seen.
Demi Moore?
I've heard of her.
You know, where they're doing the pottery?
Oh, yes, no. I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with the pop culture reference aspects of the film.
Yeah. I've seen the GIFs.
Yeah.
So this one is a bucket list item for me. So we're just like diving right in. Episode 2, bucket list.
Yeah.
Bang.
Are you scared?
Nah. So this is a bit of like a return to something for me as opposed to like a whole new world. So this is something that I've delved in before, but not as intensely as I would like. And like the last couple of years just haven't been doing it like at all, I would say.
Why?
I got a little annoyed in the last little while. Just I kind of had this thing of like, I think just all the COVID stuff, anything that was even slightly woo or non-scientific, just like was not for me anymore.
Right. No, I can understand that.
Yeah. And so I kind of just closed a few things down and I was like, didn't really want to see it go, but could also, I don't know, was just having a bit of a moment. And now I'm out of it. And so it's time to get back into it.
Right. So keep doing the sex, stop the magic, but now we're bringing back sex magic.
We're bringing back sex magic.
Hell yeah.
We're going in hard, you know? So this is a bucket list thing for me, but I'm also keen to know like how you define magic in your life.
In my life?
Yeah.
I guess magic to me is just anything, I don't know, I guess it's obviously got a very key tie-in with spirituality, I suppose. I think magic is just an energy that has, you can't really prove, I suppose, has nothing to do with science. I guess, I actually don't know how to explain it, but I believe in it.
That's good. Well, we've got a witch coming in who's going to tell us all about it anyway.
Hell yeah.
But have you tried sex magic before? Or just magic?
Well, our guest, Vixen Temple, I have been a big fan of her and have followed her on Instagram and seen her perform and all of that stuff. So she wrote an article about sex magic and manifestation. I read that. And so that's kind of the only thing I've gone off, but that would have been over a year ago. So I think I just kind of introduced the concept of manifesting through masturbation, and I do it sometimes, but I am quite lazy. I have a feeling I'm going to learn that there's a lot more that goes into it and it's a lot more about intention, whereas what I do is sometimes I'll be masturbating and then I'll be like, oh, better use this energy real good while I'm like leading up to it, and then I'm like, this is what I want, yeah. So I'm definitely not doing it correctly.
You don't know, you might be.
Yeah.
It's harnessing your energy, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you're
my
doing.
energy is just quite scattered, I suppose.
Harness it. Bring it in.
Bring it in.
Bring it in together.
Yeah. But other than that, sex magic, no. I am a fan of spirituality and the occult. I have crystals. I charge them every other full moon when I can be bothered to remember. And I do like little rituals and things here and there, but I'm not very strict with it. It's just kind of more of a go with the flow type thing if I feel like doing it.
So do you consider yourself a witch?
I don't identify as a witch, I suppose. I just don't really, I find it hard to claim things like that. Like for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'll dabble a little bit here and there. So like I wouldn't claim that for myself, but I'd be interested to understand if that could mean that I qualify.
Yeah.
That would be a fun thing to learn. But no, I wouldn't consider myself a witch. My sister's a witch.
Is she?
Yeah.
How so?
Michaela, I don't know, she just got proper into it. She's got an altar. She's got everything, and she's fantastic. She's very organized. She's a Virgo. So she's got like, you know, a leather-bound book which has her inventory of all of her things. And recently she helped me with a ritual. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's fun.
So yeah, she's proper into it. I would say she's a witch.
Yeah.
When I look at that, I'm like, I'm not on that level.
There's still time.
What about you?
You could join me on my bucket list. Well, I am wearing a top right now that has witch across the
You are very
neck,
much telling people that you are a witch.
so I do like to claim it.
Oh.
I've always felt like I've been a witch. Even when I was little, like I was very obsessed with witch stories. I had one of my first children's book was called Emma the Witch. And I was like, okay, that's me. I'm a witch. But also, like, I was always like making like potions and soaps and shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like when I was doing anything like crafty, I wanted it to be that kind of stuff. I wanted it to feel like I was making a potion that I could then use a spell with and stuff. And now it's just like I think a bit of like seeking out the magic all the time. Like I just want it. I want magical things and pleasurable things. And in my head, I tie like pleasure and magic very closely together, which is why I'm so excited to talk to Vixen. So that we can really like get the lowdown on what it is, like what is sex magic? Why is it different from regular sex? Like what are the ins and outs? Hey. So let's just get into it. Let's talk to Vixen Temple, a real life sex witch.
So today we are going to speak to a sex witch to get the rundown on everything sex magic. Ooh. Vixen Temple is in the studio with us today. She is a sex worker, a sex witch, an activist, a writer, and a performance artist.
Busy gal.
Busy gal. She was on season 2 to chat about the OnlyFans shitstorm with Emma, as well as the Sister Foster effects on online sex workers. It's an amazing episode, which I highly recommend that everyone listens to after they listen to this one. Vixen, welcome back to the Electric Rodeo.
Kia ora, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
Yay.
I'm really honoured to be here.
Yay. And I suppose one thing I did not mention in your long list of accolades is you are also an ATMS affiliate.
I am, yes.
Yay.
Use code Vixen Temple 10 to get 10% off your purchase. Hashtag sponsored, hashtag ad.
Excellent plug. So, you are a sex witch. Fuck yeah. What does that mean?
So for me, a sex witch encompasses someone that, if I look at working with magic, it's using elements and intention to create a desired outcome. And so for me, with sex magic, I'm using sexual energy to create a desired outcome, and I'm mixing that with my intention. And for me, that looks like when I masturbate, I will think of an intention, like a desired outcome that I want. I'm a very visual person in my mind. I think it's my ADHD too. I can really picture things strongly in my mind. So when I'm masturbating, I'm picturing a desired outcome in my head and what it would look like and what it would feel like and what it would smell like, all the senses. And then, you know, you don't have to climax. That's not the desired outcome. But for me personally, I when I climax, that's me releasing that energy, that taira out into the universe. And from there, I just sort of use that energy to keep me motivated to create my desired outcome and make that goal a reality.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
So what is the appeal of sex magic generally, do you think? Why are people so interested in it? Because I feel like it's a topic that's maybe starting to creep a little bit more into like the everyday vernacular a little bit.
Yeah. I think there's intrigue around it. The way that I think there was intrigue around me becoming a sex work activist is that anything sex related is quite taboo because we live in a very puritanical country here in Aotearoa. It's colonized, it's patriarchal. So as much as, you know, we're progressive in many ways, I mean, we have fully decriminalized sex work for citizens of Aotearoa. There is a lot of sexual negativity within our country that is a byproduct of colonialism and patriarchy. And so I think we're living in an era now where people are starting to realize that sex is not bad. Like it's literally the most natural human act that a person can do.
Totally.
And I think we're seeing a new generation of witches that are understanding the power in sexual energy. And, you know, when I say sex, I don't mean that two gender heteronormative, like a penis penetrating a vagina. For me, sex can be anything that creates intimacy and brings you into your body. So like a back rub, a steamy makeout sesh, like me masturbating to myself is me making love to myself.
Yeah.
And so I think the interest in sex is just, we are living in a time where, because of social media, because of the internet era, despite online censorship, which we talked about in my first episode, we're hearing from a lot of marginalized communities. We're able to challenge the norm that we have all been raised and socialized that, sex is bad, whether it's religious reasons or just cultural reasons. A lot of people, I think, have sexual trauma because we've been raised to think that sex is bad. But I, as a sex witch, am an advocate that sex is natural, sex is healthy, as long as it's between, consenting adults and no one's getting hurt and everyone's consenting and all that. Sex is a beautiful sacred act that I think should be celebrated and not have all of the shame and stigma attached to it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much because it does feel a bit like, just with my initial looking into it and stuff, it definitely feels like a reclamation of sexual energy and connection as well. I heard on a podcast a few days ago someone trying to explain what sex magic was, and they said basically imbuing sensuality and sex with meaning.
Yes.
And I really loved that. I was like, oh, that's something I'm going to start doing. But, even just that way of looking at it is you're so right. For such a long time, we've been so sex negative about everything.
Yeah.
It was always shameful and traumatic. And so now embracing of it as this beautiful, magical part of your life is so cool. I'm so excited to get really into it.
Yeah.
So excited. And I agree with everything you say. I think especially me being an AFAB person, I was raised under patriarchal systems that taught me that sex was something that was done to me. It was not something that I was meant to be actively participating in.
Totally.
Being a sex witch has really helped me reclaim a lot of sexual trauma that I have from growing up in a patriarchal world that views women and AFAB bodies as objectifying. And for me, I love my body. I think I'm attractive. I think I'm a sexual, sexy being. I always have been. I've always been very in tune with my sensuality, especially my feminine sexuality, and that's something that gets really pathologized and villainized and demonized in this patriarchal world. So I think there's something quite political and something quite revolutionary in me to identify as a sex witch in a world that, hears that and they will attach so much negative stigma to it. But for me, it's just practicing mindful sex with myself. I think that's really beautiful and really powerful. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because it's like a double whammy. It's sex and witch. It's two things that people will be like, ah!
Oh, exactly. And that's why I love it. I'm a Leo sun. I like shaking up the challenging people and making people, and I don't mind being the center of attention sometimes when I choose to be.
The whole time you're talking, I'm just like, you are such a Leo.
I'm a Leo. I'm a Leo sun through and through.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love Leos. Sister signs. So
So for you personally, how did you get into it? What was your journey into becoming a sex witch?
I think my answer to that is going to make a few people uncomfortable, but I really invite you to sit with that discomfort because this is, sometimes discomfort is not always bad. It means that you're challenging and evolving your perspective. So to answer your question, from around the age of 5 years old, I've been masturbating. And I didn't realize, obviously, as a child that was what I was doing. What I used to do, dead ass, was I would I'd get on my hands and knees, I'd cross my legs and just rub together. And I remember as a child, I'd feel this explosion.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm magic. No one else can do this. I rub my legs together and I feel an explosion.
Yeah.
And it felt good. And I didn't realize, that was me essentially having an orgasm. And so as I got older, and actually going back to when I did that, as a child and getting older and just exploring that more, I started to, in my head, make wishes when I quote unquote exploded.
So you literally just came onto it naturally. It was within you.
It was. I firmly believe that whether I was one in a past life or it's in my whakapapa, but it was just something that I naturally knew to do. And then as I got older, it was when I was in high school that I started, because I grew up in Ōtepoti, Dunedin, where sexuality is, it's not a thing.
No.
It's something that's done to women. And I, in high school, was that obnoxious, quote unquote, slutty girl who was always talking about masturbating. And everyone's around would be like, ew, that's gross. Women don't masturbate. That's so gross.
Only men are allowed to do that.
Exactly, right. Because, you should not know your own bodies. That way you're easier for men to manipulate. So I would, I started learning about female masturbation properly. And it just one day hit me when I actually purposely, as a, I think, 16 or 17-year-old, got in my room, chucked on some porn, actually masturbated mindfully. And then the explosion hit and I went, oh my God, that's what I was doing this whole time. I was masturbating since I was 5. And I was making wishes, and I swear some of them came true.
Yes.
But I didn't hear the term sex witch and sex magic until when I was living in Tamaki Makaurau. I think, for a long time I just sort of identified as a witch. I did a lot of work with Aphrodite and Lilith and their very strong feminine sexual deities. So it wasn't until around the age 22, 23 that I discovered Gabriella Herstick talking about glamour magic, which was something I've practiced a lot, and that's, using fashion to bring out the inside and make it reflect on the outside.
That's something I could get into.
It really is. It's a really cool thing. Just Google glamour magic. Marilyn Monroe did it. A lot of drag queens, drag kings do it. It's just using costume and fashion to bring the inside outward and give you like it's delusion in a way. It's like, I'm delusionally pretty right now.
I don't think that is an illusion or a delusion in your case, to be fair.
Not with you guys either. Not with any woman, any trans, any non-binary people. Men, on the other hand, wash your ass. But anyway, there's work to be done. But no. So I heard the term sex magic from Gabriella Herstick, sex witch too, and just from there I was like, that feels right. I'm a sex witch. I use sexual energy to create goals and desired outcomes. So that was my journey. And I know it's it's weird to sit here and say that at the age of 5 I had an orgasm, but I think about the way we talk about how, little boys are allowed to, it's funny when they're, oh, look, he's like fiddling with himself. Oh, he's touching himself. That's so funny. It's so disgusting the way that AFAB bodies are villainized from masturbation because it's patriarchal. It's to keep us oppressed. It's to deny us bodily autonomy. Yeah. If we don't know our own pleasure, a man can come along and tell you what your pleasure is. And that's something I try to advocate for with my sex magic is know thyself. You know, using the what is that from the Bible? I don't know, but like using something from like know thyself. I'm going to take it and reclaim it as something to empower you. Know thyself. Know what makes you feel good. Know what you don't like. Know what you do like. Explore your body. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's a lot of religions out there that will literally say, female masturbation opens up the gates of hell. And I go, well,
I hope so.
I mean, if it were true, I would have had the portal of hell by now. I masturbate a lot, so I
Full
can
time in my bedroom.
I know, right? I'm calling bullshit because there is no portal to hell in my bed, and if there was, there would be.
In my bed, in the bathroom, in the living room.
Yeah, 5-year-old me would have been sucked to hell and been like, all I did was rub my legs together. Yeah. What did I do wrong?
It's interesting though, because I feel like the more I talk with my AFAB friends, there's more discussions about things we realized we were doing from a very young age that was masturbation we didn't realize. Like I remember being up against some pool jets and feeling that on my crotch and being like, oh wow.
Oh my
and
God,
I did not know what I was doing. And I was like around family and friends, like you just aren't aware. Like we're just listening to our bodies because we haven't been told to do anything else.
Thank you. That is very much it. And I think it's something that when I tell that story, I get scared that people are going to think that I'm like this creep who's like encouraging children's sexuality, but it's not. Like you said, I didn't know it was sexual.
No.
It was something I just figured out how to do. And I hear the same from my friends, who used to like get the shower head and like shove it, shit it on the clit or like I remember
I didn't shove it anywhere.
You gently place it upon the clit. Or I had a friend that would set their phone to vibrate and just like sit it on.
Yes,
I had a boyfriend do that too. I've done all of the I'm in the right profession. I've done all of the weird things. If you haven't, I did an episode in season 2 and we talked about my journey with masturbation and it's literally like toothbrush, shower head, all that stuff.
So all the accessories.
It really is so normal. And I think, the way that our world villainizes quote unquote women's sexuality is it's really vulgar. It's really oppressive. And I think when people understand the root of where a lot of it comes from, and in recent years I've really discovered it's very colonial too. It's a lot of white supremacist values to like keep the man as the one that does sex to people, and it keeps women oppressed, and it's really horrible. It's really disgusting. This puritanical, it's so ingrained in people that I really don't think they realize it until they're confronted with someone like me who's very vulgar and very unfiltered, and I just say things. You know, I talk about masturbating as if, you know, I had some toast this morning, the sky is blue, and I had a wank.
Yeah.
And people, they get really, I know I make people uncomfortable. I think I sometimes enjoy it because I think, well, I'm helping challenge your perspective of what a quote unquote woman should act like.
And I hope that it's like encouraging people to actually think like, why does it make me feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Like, why does that make me feel shamed to hear that you're doing that? Like, what is it in my history that has caused that? Because I was also a young masturbator. Like, I was doing it from like exactly the same age, as long as I can remember, exactly doing the legs
so
as well.
validating to hear.
And in my family, it was very much like, don't do that in front of people, but never why. And, you know, and I was always like, and so for my whole life, I had this real sense of shame about doing it. And I knew that I like had done it, like I never stopped. I did it my whole life. And I remember for some reason, like it just got into my head at some point, like that was a terrible thing and it's so embarrassing and I shouldn't be doing it. And I remember I refused to have a 21st birthday because I thought that someone was going to do a speech and talk about it and out me in front of everyone. And so it was like a very huge thing that played on me for a really, really long time. And now it's like, now everyone I talk to is like, oh yeah, I did this. This was a huge part of my life.
No,
man.
right?
It was so embarrassing.
No,
you couldn't even do your 21st because of it. And that's what I mean. Like that shame is so ingrained in us. We can't even figure out where it comes from half the time because it's so in the moral DNA of society. And it's just, it gets penetrated into our souls, into our waiora. And it's just frustrating when I hear that and I resonate with that because it's like, even at the time, I didn't know what I was doing was sexual. I knew it was something that I don't tell people I do it.
It just feels good.
It just feels good. And that's what I think is the weird thing about when people are so against sex. I'm like, it feels good. It's good for you. I've learned working for Adult Toy Mega, like working for you, like the scientific benefits to masturbation. And there's a lot. And I, as someone with celiac disease, you know, when I get gluten, I get really intense cramps. And if I masturbate, it's like that and a joint might be the only things that they won't completely get rid of the pain, but it will numb it because or when I'm depressed, you know, I masturbate. When I'm feeling cathartic, I have a wank, and it really like lifts me out of these ruts that I can get in because they're releasing the good chemicals.
Exactly.
And who doesn't want that?
So how does sex magic look in your day-to-day life? Because obviously is it strictly for sex and masturbation, or do you see magic like creep into other areas?
Oh, magic creeps into all aspects of my life, and I've sometimes joked about I'm a sex witch, but I quite like the term pleasure witch. Yeah. Because I'm just someone that the first deity.
That's cool.
Thank you. The first deity I started working with was Aphrodite at the age of 17. And she has taught me that as humans, we're not meant to suffer. You know, we're put on this earth in these human physical bodies to experience the universe in all its divinity and all its sensuality and all its eros and all its desire. And so I am someone that strives to live a life where I let desire lead me. And, you know, I let logic creep in there sometimes. You know, you can't always be happy. You can't always be indulging.
It's that Virgo Mercury.
It's the Virgo Mercury. It's the Virgo moon.
Got to be in there somewhere.
Got to find that balance. Got to still have logic in there. But for me, my day-to-day daily magic practice is, you know, I do glamour magic when I like dress up. And, you know, I'm dressed like a brat still today. I'm living for it.
Hell yeah.
I like to cleanse my energy. I like, especially, you know, being a sex worker, I like to make sure I'm cleansing my energy, my mana. But yeah, I think the pleasure magic is something I really resonate with because I'm not masturbating every day. Like my sexuality is fluid. Sometimes I have hypersexuality. Sometimes I don't have any sexual urges. And it's something that on those days that I'm not feeling particularly horny or wanting to masturbate, I can incorporate pleasure in the sense of, you know, having a nice breakfast that releases the chemicals. It's making myself pancakes with like blueberries, like something that just makes me, you know, like aphrodisiacs in a way. Like if it's not in specifically sexual energy, it's just desire. It's just eros. It's just anything that evokes pleasure and happiness in me. And I think that, again, there's something very political in that because it's rebelling against this world that says you need to suffer and you need to be seeking outward, you know, validations. And it's very capitalist of like, you need to buy all these things. Like
we're meant to face challenges to be worthy.
Yeah, that. It's that really like suffering makes you more interesting, blah, blah, blah. And I think, no, like suffering is a part of life and it's, you know, the duality of being human. It's the as above, so below. But I'm not here to suffer. I'm here to experience the senses of life. And so I try to live life through the five senses of like things that feel good, things that smell good. That's what magic looks like to me.
Yeah.
And it's helped me through a lot of dark times in my life.
Amazing. And so do you consider it like a ritual? Like, could you give us an idea of like what a session, like, you know, if you're like intentionally going to sit down or stand up to stand in the corner to masturbate, like what would that kind of ritual session type of thing look like?
Cool.
What's it called?
So for me, ritual is actually very much the right word for it. It's a ritual, and it's something that, you know, I usually correlate with the moon. I'm a very moon witch. Like on the full moon, I do releasing things. On the new moon, I manifest things.
Yes.
And leading up to I very much coincide with the moon and the seasons. For me, a 6 magic ritual, if it was one that I'm sitting down with intention and with a desired outcome that I'm trying to manifest, a need for a better word, I recall when I did one night under, I think it was a Virgo new moon, and I did a marriage ceremony to myself, where essentially I was declaring myself as my life partner, and that, you know, no matter what in life, I live to make you happy, for my inner child, for my inner teen, for myself.
Wow.
And I remember that one, what I did was I opened the circle. So this is when a bit of my pagan comes out. I opened the circle to all the elements, you know, air, fire, earth, water. And I cast the circle with myself inside it. I invite my ancestors, my spirit guides. I usually call upon Aphrodite or Lilith or whichever deity I'm working with. And again, being a visual person, like say I was doing an Aphrodite ritual, I'd have seashells laid out, I'd have roses, I'd have honeys, things that are associated with her. And for this Virgo love's marriage ceremony I did upon myself, it was, I remember having a rose and just like using the senses, right? Like tracing the rose across my body and falling into my body and feeling the physical touch of the rose. And then I sprayed myself with perfume and I lit a scented candle, and it's evoking all the senses.
Yeah.
And then I had a mirror in front of me and I spread my legs and I was using an adult toy mega toy. I was using a glass dildo, I'm pretty sure. I love a glass dildo.
I think all witches love a glass dildo.
Right, there's something they look like a wand.
Yeah.
They
It's
look
ethereal.
magic. Yeah, it is ethereal. They're very magic looking, and as a visual person, I appreciate that. So I had my glass dildo, I was masturbating, and then right as I orgasmed, you know, I looked at myself in the mirror as I orgasmed, and I just thought to myself, like, I love you. I vow to always honor you and your needs. I vow to protect you. I vow to, you know, what you do when you marry someone. Like, I promise to be your best friend and blah, blah. I was just doing that to myself. So that's what that 6 ritual looked like to me. That was done a few years ago. And
That's
since,
so cool.
Thank you. And you know, since then, like, it'll just be one of those things where if I want to have a night where I do a ritual, it's just, it starts with like a scented candle. I'll have a 6 magic playlist. It's just evoking all the senses, touch, smell, sound, and then falling into my body, and then climaxing, letting that climax build. And then sometimes I don't always orgasm though. Sometimes there's times I can't orgasm. So I just think, hey, the energy's still there, right?
Yeah.
The second I think to myself, all right, I'm going to masturbate, that sexual energy is there because the thought's there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about being a witch. It's taking a thought and bringing it into the physical world and making it a 3-dimensional thing.
Yeah, because you did the fact that orgasming isn't necessarily a part of it. In hindsight, obviously not, because like that's not a necessity. But for me, because I've read, you either did an article for Adult Toy Megastore or you did just something on your Instagram page, and it was about masturbating and manifestation. And so I kind of like dabbled in it a little bit. But in my mind, I thought it was like very much about the release at the end. So that's actually really good to know.
Yeah, I did write that for Adult Toy Mega, and I think I did mention, you know, that you don't have to have an orgasm because I don't want to push
I missed that part. I was too busy masturbating already.
Yeah, you're excited. You're like, let's get this done. I really, you know, I try not to push this. You know, there's people out there that can't orgasm, whether it's trauma or just a block or they just can't. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, everyone's bodies are different, especially vulva owners. Like, our bodies are very magic. And I mean, so are all bodies, but like, the vulva, the vagina, it's a very magic thing. And it's life and death. You know, it can bring life, it can destroy it. I think there's something, just sex in itself, it's strongly linked to death, and I think there's something really, really powerful in that. So I try to encourage people that, you know, everyone's bodies are different, and sex magic looks different to every person. Like, that's how it looks to me, and I usually do prefer to have an orgasm at the end, just because it's my ADHD. I just want that dopamine release.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's really just using energy and setting intentions and just remembering that and focusing on that. And I think there's something really powerful in that.
Absolutely.
I love that. I just love the idea of like finding magical things
Yeah.
in everyday parts of your life. So this season, Tash and I are actually working through like a bucket list of sexual things that we want to do.
Our own ones. We've got our own separate ones.
And so one of mine is actually to get super into sex magic. So I dabbled in it a couple of years ago. My boyfriend is a witch, in my opinion. He's always been a self-proclaimed
He
witch.
has witchy vibes.
He's very into tarot and all of that
cool.
stuff. And he actually introduced me to sex magic.
I like him already. He sounds cool. He's a keeper.
He's
That's sick. That is so cool.
And then, so we were like quite into it for a while, and then life just kind of got in the way, and I've had kind of like issues with sexual pain and stuff like this, and I kind of became like a little bit of my sexuality kind of flew out the door, I would say. And so like I'm going through a phase of like bringing it back in all of these different ways, and this is one of them. And even the last few days, like we've just been asking each other, like at the end of every day, like, what did you do to make your day a bit more magical, babe? And it's like, and like some of it is, it's just like the other day I walked to the waterfront on my lunch break rather than sitting at my desk, and I was like, damn, it felt good.
Yeah.
And you know, like
Invoking the elements.
There you go. No, there you go. You want to be with water. But that's what I was saying before, like being a pleasure witch. It's just doing things that bring you back into your body, that remind you're a human.
Yeah.
It's when you go for a walk and actually taking in the scenes around you, the smell of, especially when spring hits and you can see the flowers blossoming and you can hear the buzzy bees.
Yeah.
It
feels different. Yeah.
It does. It's just doing things with intention behind it. Because I think, and I can say this, someone with ADHD, like there's a lot of things in life that I do on autopilot, and we live in a very fast-paced world. And I think my magic just reminds me to sometimes return to my body, feel what's happening to me, because I've got one life and I don't want to be old one day and look back and just feel like I was constantly on autopilot. I want to look back and remember moments that I was doing things with intention.
So can we talk a little bit about like the history of sex magic? Because obviously there's been witches and witchcraft throughout so many different cultures around the world. And do you have any like indication of where kind of like the sex magic part became part of that, or has it always been, or when do we know that existed?
I don't know a lot about the history of sex magic. I know a lot about the history of more contemporary sex magic, which is what we're seeing pop up these generations. But I have a sneaking suspicion. I feel like a lot of things in life, it comes from Indigenous communities. I feel like it's something that, as I mentioned, colonization has taught us to have sexual shame. When I look at Aotearoa pre-colonization, I see how we embraced takatapui. I see how we embraced non-monogamy, and we celebrated taiera, and we saw that sex was tapu, it was sacred, and it was something that, you know, I see a lot in a lot of Indigenous cultures and a lot of ancient societies, these like sexual rituals that were hosted. Like even look at like Rome or Greece, where like the history of Valentine's was founded through, I think, Lupercal. I can't remember the actual name for it, but it was this fertility festival where people were just having orgies and whipping each other with like goat milk drenched like fabric. And there's, I think, in a lot of ancient societies, and especially in a lot of Indigenous communities, they saw the potency in sexual magic, and so they performed a lot of rituals to evoke that, in need for a better word. And so that's my suspicion, and it's something I actually want to read more about, and I've got a wish list of books that I am going to read to know more so that I can answer that question properly. But from my understanding of when I look to, you know, historical societies, especially ancient societies, and how they just treated even sex work as sacred, I feel like sex magic has Indigenous roots, and it's something that through the ages, and with, you know, Christianity and Catholicism and white supremacy, it's been treated as bad. It's black magic, it's bad, it's, you know, it's wrong, and it's something that you'll go to hell if you participate in it. And the reason that Catholic religions especially, you know, deny you connecting to your body, it's again because Catholic religions and Christian religions, they bank on this, you know, sense of like you're inherently sinful and you need to look outward to receive, you know, you need to be forgiven and you need to come to us and confess your sins. And it's to keep people scared and oppressed, whereas sex magic and just witchcraft in general, I think, teaches people that the tools are within you. And that is scary to the Catholic Church, and that's why they came in and wiped out all of the, you know, the healers and, you know, witches. Historically, they were just healers. They were midwives. They were scientific people who were just trying to progress human evolution, and the white man came along and ruined that.
That's so funny, because what you've said is literally like listed in my next question.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, do you think it's important that we are reclaiming the term witch? And particularly because you're right. The people that were persecuted as witches back by the church.
They're all women.
They were women, and they weren't even witches. They were just anyone that people wanted to get rid of, or who lived a life different than what they wanted people to be living.
Yeah.
So it was the healers and the midwives and scientists and the women who were in touch with their sexuality and didn't want to only have sex within their marriage with their shitty husbands.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
And again,
Didn't want a shitty husband.
Yeah.
No, they didn't. And it was a lot of Indigenous women too who were just practicing these things that the white man saw and was like, oh, that's evil because I can't comprehend it, so it must be bad. And villainizing that and pathologizing that and demonizing it. And that's why I really do a lot of work with Lilith, and I really love her story of how, she refused to submit to Adam.
Yes.
And so she was demonized for it. And now we have this, she eats babies and she's a succubus who goes and sleeps with men in the night. And
Good for her.
Good for her. Yeah, good for her. Go off, queen. Like we love Lilith, and I love Lilith. That's why I have the snake ring on today, because the snake, and just it represents like sexuality. And Lilith, I think, really speaks to that feminine trauma that a lot of us AFAB people or people that have been socialized as women in our society feel towards their sexuality, that it's shameful, that it's wrong. And so going back to reclaiming the word witch, I think there's something very powerful in that for anyone to reclaim the word witch, especially, trans people, non-binary people, takatapui people. Like, it's something that we're magic. And I think cis straight white men they just don't love themselves, and they see us in our magic and they envy it. And when they can't possess it and conquer it as the very masculine thing to do, they assert on it and they make it small. And that's what I think's happened to a lot of queer people, a lot of takatapui people. We've just been pushed into the shadows because the white man hates himself.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't fit within their structures of patriarchy, right, it's got to be
villainized. Yeah, right. It's got to go. It's got to be wrong. And that's, I think, very much what happened with witches. I think it's very much what happens with sex. It's what happens with sex workers. I feel there's something, so me being a sex witch sex worker, there's something, I feel like I'm making my ancestors proud by loudly and unapologetically identifying as that. I really hope that they look to me and think, yeah, girl, go you.
They're definitely screaming, fuck yeah.
Oh, I hope so. I feel it, but I hope so.
So for the average listener who does not identify as a witch, can they still explore sex magic?
Absolutely. Again, it's something that the word witch, it's each to their own. I use the word witch because I am someone that works with energy and magic. And that's just, I just love the word witch. And I love, again, reclaiming it the way I love referring to myself as a whore, because it's something that has been used to weaponize people. So I love to say I'm a sex witch, I'm a whore.
Hell yeah.
But I think anyone, I know anyone can partake in sex magic. It's something that is naturally within us. If you're someone that feels sexual desire, and if you're not, that's so fine. You can explore other magic. But if you're someone that you feel sexual energy, you feel sexual desire, and you feel it, right? You feel it.
Yeah.
It's a force. It's the Māori in me. Like, I really resonate with how everything possesses mana, everything possesses a soul. And so energy, sexual energy, you feel it when you get horny. You feel it in your body. You feel it in your mind. You feel it in all aspects of your being. And I think anyone that feels that can work with that. You don't have to say that you're a witch. You don't even have to say that you're a sex witch. You don't even have to refer to it as sex magic.
Yeah.
Just do what feels right for you. I say that with anyone. Just don't hurt anyone. Get consent and do what feels right for you.
And before you know it, you'll already be practicing some magic.
Exactly. I'm sure there's people out there listening to this right now being like, oh my God, I've been doing sex magic.
So what is it like, if you could give us one example of a way that someone listening now could dip their toes in, just to start, if they're like still just not sure about harnessing their own power?
I honestly think it's an unlearning thing, right? Like, especially for AFAB people it really, for me, like I said, engaging in sex magic has helped me unlearn a lot of patriarchal coding. It's helped me unlearn a lot of trauma. I have PTSD. So for me, it's helping me reclaim my body and my desire and my eros towards myself. And so it's something that I think, because I've been masturbating from such a young age, I think I'm someone that was born in the wrong century. I was meant to be in the future. Like, I'm not. I am ahead of the times in many ways, dare I say. I don't even care if that sounds arrogant. I am.
I would say so.
Thank you. And so for me, it didn't take as much to unlearn a lot of the shame. But I have, as a sex worker, I have a lot of vulva owners come to me and they say to me, like, I want to masturbate, but it actually makes me feel nauseous when I do. Like, it's something I can't even look. I've had people come up to me and say, I don't even know what my vagina looks like.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart because it's something that from a young age I had a mirror between my legs looking at it and being like, wow, she's magic. Like, go off, queen. And so I think to anyone listening who, especially if you're someone that does have a lot of sexual shame from your cultural background or religious background, be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And you're rewiring your neurological pathways because you've been conditioned to think it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why you might have a visceral physical response to, you start to put your hand down there, you go, oh my God, this is wrong. I'm going to go to hell, or I'm going to be punished, or God's going to smite me, or whatever it is you've been told. Be patient with yourself. I think start small, maybe just start using your hands and your fingers or whatever. And then you can start to slowly incorporate toys. And it's really remembering that at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your sexual energy. No one can tell you what that should and shouldn't look like and shouldn't feel like. Only you can. So the more you sit with it, the more you feel it, the more you're going to connect to your intuition too, and you're going to trust yourself more. And it's really building trust with yourself, because we've been raised to not trust ourselves. We've been raised to deny your intuition. And sex magic has taught me that no, I can trust myself. I can trust my body. I can trust the sensations it sends me. It's a very intentional act. So to anyone listening that wants to start exploring it, I would strongly recommend just figuring out what feels good for you, watching porn that feels good for you, not having shame around that, and just starting slow with masturbation. It's really a good way to go about it, and then you can build from that. And if you want to learn more, I'd highly recommend reading Gabriella Herstick's book, Sex Magic. I think if you just...
It's on my list now.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It's a really good book. It's like the Sex Magic Bible, to be honest.
Yeah,
so
great.
Highly recommend that, but also do your research, know what it is that you're doing, and build from that, really.
Fabulous. I'm feeling so enlightened from this. Like, when you're talking about intuition, like, that's something that I am exploring myself. So, like, you kind of mentioning that, just because I find that it's naturally quite strong. Like, I've read in my placements, it's like relatively strong, like Pisces, Aquarius. Scorpio.
Oh,
like,
yeah, but
three.
Pisces too. Scorpio, Pisces, and Aquarius is a signs that are naturally extremely intuitive.
So that's something I want to, like, play around with. So now I'm like gonna go home and I'm like gonna find a way to infuse it in my sex magic.
No, seriously, like it's all intuition.
So sex magic obviously has benefited your life a lot. In terms of manifestations, like, have you felt many like big tangible things come to fruition as a result of it?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the word manifestation, like, I struggle with it sometimes just because I do use the word. I mean, it was the title of my article, but I don't want to come at it from this very ignorant perspective that, I am mindful that we live in a world where there are systems set up to keep people small, and you can't manifest your way out of like poverty and all that stuff. So for me personally, the big potent things that I have felt like I have manifested has been when I've set the intention of like, I want to heal from trauma. I want to not let trauma dictate my life and cloud my perception anymore. So there was a time when I did a sex magic on myself where I was like, you deserve to be happy. And I climaxed and I bawled my eyes out, because it's when you've been traumatized, when you have PTSD and depression, anxiety and all that, I think you get quite comfortable in your a need for a better word. I was a victim of a lot of trauma, and I had to let myself be a victim for a while, but I didn't want to see myself as a victim forever, because I was not taking control of my life. I was just letting things, I was on survival mode. And when I've moved here to Wellington and I've started building community here, I realized, okay, I don't have to be in survival mode anymore. I can actually let people in. I can build community. I can let my walls down a little. And I used sex magic to reinforce to me that, like, when I moved to the city, I did a spell where I said, I want to find my community. I want to find my chosen whānau. And I want to start to actually believe when people tell me they love me that they actually mean it. And so that was something that I used sex magic to just start to believe myself that I am someone worthy of receiving. love.
So this is going off track just a little bit, but recently I have been reading a book called Witches, Sluts and Feminists.
I love that. Oh my God.
It's so
you should
good.
also read her other book, The Feral Feline Gaze.
It's on my list.
But yes, Witches, Sluts and Feminists, very good book. Yes.
So on the second reading of this book, and I don't know how I didn't pick up on it the first time, but she was talking a little bit about the idea of the witch's broomstick and how there's this myth of like, so the witches are the witches.
Yeah.
And then the broomstick that they were fucking, so it's kind of like a metaphor for a dildo.
Yeah.
Have you heard this? What do you think about
Yes.
this? I love it.
I actually have a whole act based around this that I performed recently where I came on stage and I was this domesticated wife who was, sweeping her husband's mess.
Did you post this on your Instagram?
I did.
Yeah, I've seen
and
this.
I came
So
on
good.
stage sweeping, I was a domesticated wife sweeping and doing the housework. And then I jumped on the broomstick, and what essentially happened, according to a few scholars, is that during, I think it was like around the medieval era too, you take rye from bread. Do you remember the craze of like when people, they had this medicine that made people dance themselves to death? Like they were out there, they couldn't stop dancing and they died. So rye, it's a hallucinogen, and what these witches were doing, they were making hallucinogens, and it was deadly to consume it through the mouth. So they rubbed it on their broomsticks.
Flying ointment.
They inserted it within their vaginas, and that's where the mindset of riding a broomstick comes from.
Yes.
But I also love to think of it. That's why I referenced in my act as this like taking this object that is like, all right, here's a broom, you've got to sweep up after your husband, and using it and literally fucking it and saying, you know what, fuck you. It's so literally the definition of fuck the patriarchy.
Yes.
It's fucking a broomstick. There's also people that link it to the devil's dick. It's like you're riding the devil's dick and all that, and that cracks me up. But I really love the thought of the flying ointment. They had to insert it through the vagina.
Yeah.
And they started having hallucinations, and that's a lot of what magic is. Again, going back to a lot of indigenous communities, the reason that psychedelics are so heavily stigmatized is because of racism.
Yeah.
And it's something that witches were using psychedelics to perform rituals to unpack the mind and see more of what's there. And I just think I love that you know that, because that's something I love, getting the image of a broomstick.
Yes.
And there's this website that apparently this person in Australia makes like actual witch broom dildos, like they're little, and I need one of those. I need to make a witch porn where it's me like fucking a broomstick.
Please. Oh my God, do it. We will link to it in the show notes.
Yes, buy my porn. Fuck the patriarchy.
Oh my God. Fantastic witch cackle, by the way.
Yeah,
Very
thank
on
you.
brand.
Hey, I've been working hard to perfect it. I'm a witch. I gotta get the cackle down.
Amazing. And finally, because it's the reason for the season, what is the number one thing on your sex bucket list?
God, truthfully, it's to have an orgy. I've had a lot of threesomes. I've had a few foursomes. I think next on my list is I want to have a sapphic orgy.
Beautiful.
In an old abandoned church, surrounded by candles, and a very ritualistic orgy, because I think just with everyone consenting that their energy can be freely, exchanged. Imagine I've had foursomes, I've had threesomes, and the sexual energy in that is really potent.
Yeah.
But I never work with other people's sexual energy without their consent. So if I had an intentional sapphic orgy that was with the intent that we're all here to combine our magic and we can just have sexual energy together.
I can't think of anything more powerful now that I'm thinking
I
about
know,
it.
right? Can you
Is
imagine?
there a sign-up list?
Honestly, I will make this for my 30th in 3 years. I'll host a queer orgy. I think queer is the better word. Sapphic, yes, but queer. I want all.
Yeah.
Anyone's welcome, but except cis hetero men. So
Fair.
anyone else is welcome. Invite, come along. Let's have a great time. Safe, consent, boundaries, communication, and all that.
Fabulous.
I'll bring snacks. I'll bring weed. We just vibe. So if someone can provide the church, I'll bring the rest.
100%.
Yes, I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Dinoco too. Thank you for having me.
Always the best chats.
Yeah, this has been so great.
And I love being on the show. I love being just, I can just be really candid and unfiltered. And I love the podcast. I'm a big fan. I listen to it. And I enjoyed being here the first time, so I was honored to come back. So thank you for having me, both of you. It was cool to finally meet you.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to the season. Yay. And I hope that everyone enjoyed listening to my yarns.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah. And we'll post all of your links in the show notes for the episode as well, so that people can find you because you are amazing.
Well,
and don't forget to use Vixen 10 for all of your glass wand needs.
Yes,
on
I think
Adult Toy Mega
Vixen
Store.
Temple 10.
Yeah.
I think it's the full
Don't mess up that
Vixen
code,
Temple
girl.
10. I think But it's on my Instagram, so look it up. But
I will write it in the show notes.
Put it in the show. Just check the show notes, team. But yeah, go buy yourself a dildo. Glass. I love the glass ones. And go have fun and think of me while you fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I consent to it.
You've been listening to the Electric Rodeo podcast by Adult Toy Megastore.
Follow Electric Rodeo free on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And to keep up to date with our bucket list progress, follow at Electric Rodeo Podcast on Instagram.